Hello everyone. In this video, we cover from problem 31 to 35 of Think Through Geometry. If you haven't purchased the book yet, please check the comments link. Okay, so problem 31. If two lines are parallel to one another, traversed by a transversal, there exists an angle whose measure is 50 degrees. So we need to draw three lines. The first two lines are going to be parallel, so we're just going to mark out the symbol for parallel lines, and we will draw a picture about a transversal line. And there would be certain angle. And because we're using something called AIA theorem, let's just try to mark out AIA theorem. I think I should mark 50 degree inside here. And according to the AIA theorem, unlike the corresponding angle postulate, the AIA theorem states that if two lines are parallel, then we have alternate interior angle pair are also going to be congruent to each other. So our answer for this question must be 15. So we move on to problem 32. If two lines are parallel to one another, traversed by a transversal, there exists an angle whose measure is 70 degrees. So we would try to draw a set of pictures, but we need to draw a transversal a bit steeper than the previous question because we're going to have an angle whose measure is 70 degrees. Okay, so there will be some 70 degree out there, and we need to mark that the two lines are parallel to one another. According to the corresponding angle postulate, we usually call this a CA postulate. Find out the measure of its corresponding angle. So there would be an angle whose measures are pretty much the same thing. And this would be in fact known as CA postulate. Okay, so we move on to 33. If two lines are parallel to one another, traversed by a transversal, there exists an angle whose measure is 45 degrees. You know that 45 degrees creates a special right triangle, but we're not going to use that. I would say we're using alternate exterior angle theorem. We call it AEA theorem. I haven't seen any teacher actually abbreviating this as AEA theorem, but I usually abbreviate it as AEA theorem. Find out the measure of its alternate exterior angle in degrees. So we draw a picture, and I think I need to mark out 45 out there. Now, according to the, I would say, definition of alternate exterior angle, we need to have a pair of angle on the opposite side of transversal, and at the same time, it shouldn't be interior of the two parallel lines that we just drew. So in fact, this would be 45. Now, according to the AEA theorem, we understand that that angle, the answer for this question must be 45. All right, so 34 and 35. We just have two more problems. Okay, so two lines are parallel to one another, traversed by a transversal. There exists an angle whose measure is 70 degrees. According to the consecutive interior angle theorem, find out the measure of its consecutive interior angle. Now, this is going to be called as CIA theorem. Now, if you check CIA theorem, well, it's going to be on the same side of the transversal. But since it's an interior angle, it must be included between the two lines, the two parallel lines. So if I mark 70 degree out here, I would say we are looking for these particular angle that I just marked out. And in fact, consecutive interior angles, especially when we have two lines that are parallel, we know that these are going to be supplementary. So if I call this as, if I call this measure as x, then we can set up a certain equation. X plus 70 is in fact 180. So x is in fact 180 minus 70. So it becomes 110. So 110 would be the answer. Right, so we move on to the last question. Problem 35. If two lines are parallel to one another, traversed by a transversal, there exists an angle whose measure is 80 degrees. So I would say I need to draw a picture a bit steeper than problem 34. Now, according to the consecutive exterior angle theorem, find out the measure of its consecutive exterior angles. So instead of drawing two angles inside, or I would say between the two lines, two parallel lines, we need to draw a picture. We need to draw an angle or angle mark that is in fact outside those two lines. So let's just try to draw one angle out here, 80. And I think I need to find out these measures. Let's call it y. Okay, so we need to mark that these two lines are in fact parallel. And according to the CEA theorem, or we call it, yes, let's just try to mark it out, CEA theorem, we know that these measures are having the sum of 180 degrees. Just like the previous question, these are supplementary. So I would say y plus 80 must be 180. So if I try to isolate the variable y, we need to subtract 80 from the left side and the right side. And if you subtract 80 from the left side and the right side, it's going to be 100. And our answer for this question